Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
I imagine you know the feeling. That specific frequency of quiet that greets you when you expect sound. The Friday night hum of a happy home, the soft melody of a television show, the clinking of a wine glass, the low murmur of your partner's voice on the phone. Instead, I was met with a void, an overwhelming, suffocating quietness, as if someone had reached into our apartment and surgically removed its soul. It was in that uncomfortable pause, that deafening silence, that I, Elias Vance, a meticulous systems analyst, felt the first hairline crack in the foundation of my 3-year marriage to Alina Reyes. I've always lived my life by the logic of numbers, by the clean, irrefutable truth of data. In my world, 1 + 1 always equals 2. An input produces a predictable output. Systems have rules, patterns, and when a pattern is disrupted, it means a variable has been introduced, an anomaly. For 3 years, Alina had been my constant. My predictable, wonderful, grounding constant, until she wasn't. When the numbers started telling a different story from the one Alina narrated, every single detail began to matter. It started small, so small you'd call me crazy. 3 work trips in 6 weeks, all of them last minute. Elias, honey, I'm so sorry. Something's come up with the Chicago branch. None of them, not one, recorded in her company's shared calendar. I'd checked. It was a simple verification, a quick query, an anomaly. Then came the phone calls. After 11 p.m., the screen of her phone, once left casually on the coffee table, was now always face down. When it buzzed with that late-night vibration, she would snatch it up, her movements a little too quick, a little too sharp, and the call would instantly be taken to the hallway, her voice a hushed whisper, the speakerphone option making her words just indistinct enough to be maddening. Another anomaly, the most jarring, though, the password on her laptop. Just like that, it was changed. This was the woman who had written a blog post, a viral one, at that, about digital transparency in modern relationships. The woman who argued that shared passwords were a symbol of ultimate trust. She, who knew my passwords as well as her own, had suddenly built a digital wall between us. You, the observer, might think these are trivial coincidences. Paranoia, the workings of an overactive, analytical mind, but I don't see coincidences. I see patterns. I breathe patterns. It's how I find bugs in a million lines of code. It's how I know when a system is compromised. And my system, our system, was compromised. The suspicion, once a quiet hum in the back of my mind, grew into a roar. It demanded data. It demanded proof. The quietness of our home was no longer peaceful. It was the sound of a clock, ticking. Logic is a cold comfort. It doesn't offer warmth or forgiveness, but it does offer a path, and I followed it. My first step was to cross-reference her cell phone's GPS data, something any IT professional can do in minutes with our bank records, which a monitoring app displayed in real time on my screen. I told myself it was a diagnostic test, a simple system check, but I knew what it was. It was a betrayal, meeting a suspected betrayal, a poison to fight a poison. That Friday night, the one that started with the overwhelming silence, was the night the first undeniable piece of data came through. Alina had called me from the car on her way to the airport. Her voice was bright, maybe a little too bright. The flight to Chicago is on time, thank God. I should be landing just after midnight. I'll call you from the hotel. I love you. I love you, too, I'd said, my own voice feeling foreign in my ears. I watched her flight number on the airport's website. Boarding. Then, I looked at my own monitor. The light blue screen of the banking app was my oracle now. A new transaction appeared. Luigi's Trattoria. $112. 58. My heart. It didn't break. It just started beating to a different rhythm. A frantic, unsteady one. The transaction was timestamped just moments ago. I pulled up the location. The restaurant was 40 minutes from our city, 40 minutes in the opposite direction of the airport. On the monitor, the transactions appeared one after another, like a metronome marking the tempo of my accelerating heartbeat. Earlier, before she left, Alina had given me a quick kiss. I remembered the smell of expensive perfume, freshly applied. Her suitcase, packed with military precision. Everything seemed to fit, everything seemed normal, except for the data. The cold, hard, uncaring data. And then, the final piece of the puzzle for that night slotted into place. A charge from the Sunview Motel. $89. It was processed 30 minutes after her flight. The flight she was supposedly on had taken off. I didn't explode. I didn't throw my laptop against the wall. Anyone who works with systems understands that a quiet, methodical analysis is infinitely more powerful than a chaotic outburst. Evidence speaks louder than accusations. So I became a collector of evidence. That night, I connected a keylogger to our home network, a silent, invisible listener. I remotely enabled the Find My Device feature on her iPhone, giving me a persistent, real-time location ping. I subscribed to a spending analysis service that would track every penny, categorizing it, flagging it, learning her new patterns. During the pale, early hours of the morning, while the city slept, I reviewed articles on corporate infidelity. A recent study popped onto my screen. It indicated that 70% of extramarital affairs begin precisely during these short, last-minute business trips. The statistic, printed in stark black and white, hit me like a stamp legitimizing my fear. It wasn't just my paranoia anymore. It was a documented phenomenon, a predictable output from a corrupted system. I drank cold coffee, my eyes glued to the flow of data, while the house seemed to hum around me in slow motion. You might wonder why I didn't call her right then and there, why I didn't drive to that motel and demand an explanation. The answer lies in the place where obsession resides, where pain turns into a plan. If there was a lie, I wouldn't just hear it. I would capture it. I would document it with the clarity of a raw, unedited photograph. When I finally closed my laptop, the sun was just beginning to stain the horizon a sickly gray. I had mentally outlined a step-by-step plan. A plan that included installing a 4 kelvins micro camera one I had ordered weeks ago on a dark impulse in the smoke detector in our bedroom. A plan that involved combing through credit card reports with forensic precision, and above all, a plan that required preserving the marital facade until the curtains fell with a bang. From that moment on, everyday life would no longer be routine. It would be the setting for an investigation, and without Alina ever suspecting, every move she made would be measured, evaluated, and archived. Everything ready for the moment the truth revealed itself under spotlights she could never predict. The next day, I woke up with a single, clarifying thought cutting through the fog of sleeplessness. I had to prove I wasn't crazy. What most people would call jealousy, or a toxic imagination, I treated as a case to be solved. My marriage to Alina was no longer solid ground. It was a minefield, where any wrong step could blow the entire structure to pieces. I knew this, and still, I chose to walk through it. I was too technical to act on impulse. My reasoning demanded concrete evidence. Assumptions weren't enough. I needed confirmation that left no room for doubt. That afternoon, while Alina was supposedly in a workshop, I retrieved the folding ladder we kept under the bed for small household repairs. I carried it into the bedroom with a mix of cold calmness and grim determination, as if I were setting up the scene for a delicate operation. The air was still. The only sound was the soft click of the ladder's legs locking into place. I climbed up, my heart a dull thud in my chest. I unscrewed the cover of the smoke detector, my fingers surprisingly steady. I was ready to install the micro camera, to get my undeniable proof. But I wasn't prepared for what I found inside. There, nestled amongst the wires, was another camera. It was identical to the one in my pocket, disguised with the same type of finish, as if someone had bought it from the same online store, using the same hidden camera buying guide. The discovery froze everything inside me, the air in my lungs, the blood in my veins. I stood there, perched on the ladder, staring at it as if facing a trap that was about to spring. The first reaction was shock, a pure, electric jolt that short-circuited my thoughts. The second was doubt. Who had installed that camera? Why? And most importantly, since when had someone been watching the room where I slept every night? My initial impulse was to rip the device out, to smash it under my heel. But rationality, my cold, trusted friend, prevailed. I needed to analyze it. Coolly, I came down the ladder without making a sound, my movements now stealthy, deliberate. I turned on my laptop and, with a new, frantic purpose, began tracing the camera's transmission signal. I had enough knowledge to identify IP addresses, network sources, and remote access protocols. It was my native language, and that's how I found the destination of the transmission. Another laptop. Synced in real time. Receiving images not only from our bedroom, but from another hidden camera in the living room. The system used a transponder connected via a secure, encrypted signal. Its structure was elegant, professional. It was carefully set up. A new, terrifying layer of truth began to emerge. Alina wasn't just hiding something. She was also monitoring me. Instead of being merely the observed, she was the observer. What had initially seemed like a classic, albeit painful, case of infidelity suddenly took on deeper, more twisted contours. Why would she be spying on her own husband? Did she suspect me of something, too? I swallowed hard, the dry click in my throat loud in the silent room. This was part of a bigger story. A story that involved much more than a simple affair. Perhaps our marriage wasn't just cracking from one side. Perhaps it was being corroded, from both sides at once. The revelation of Alina's camera didn't bring clarity. It brought a profound, disorienting paranoia. The world tilted on its axis. I was no longer the hunter, the investigator uncovering a simple truth. I was a player in a silent, brutal game I didn't even know I was playing. Our home, which should have been a safe place, had become a field of mutual surveillance. Two distrustful players, plotting plans in silence, each believing the other was the liar. I spent the rest of the day analyzing her system. I didn't disable it. That would have tipped my hand. Instead, I studied it. I noticed the recording patterns. The cameras were only active when I left the house, or when I spent long hours in my home office. It all made sense now, in a horrifying, new way. It explained why Alina never insisted I stay home more often, why she never complained about my late nights at work. She needed the time. Time to review the files. To analyze my movements. My routines, my life. The hypothesis was risky, but not impossible. And once again, the main point remained. Nothing was what it seemed. I began to list all the moments when Alina's behavior had deviated from the norm. Every excuse to go to bed early. Every muffled laugh on the phone with her friend Jessica. Every out-of-hours meeting with fictitious clients. She wasn't acting like someone simply hiding a lover. She was acting like someone studying an opponent. This changed everything. It was hard for me to accept how much control I had lost over my own routine, my own privacy. The idea of being recorded, evaluated, my gestures and silences misinterpreted out of context. It messed with my mind in ways I had never experienced. It went beyond trust. It was about freedom, about dignity. I began to wonder how long she had been watching me through the cold, unblinking lens of a screen, interpreting my tired sighs as guilt, my need for space as distance, my quietness as a confession. Was she, like me, building her own narrative based on scattered fragments of data? The paranoia previously fueled only by bank records and strange signals now gained a face. It was Alina's face, sitting somewhere a coffee shop, her office after hours observing me, as if I were a suspect in my own life. The anguish wasn't limited to the fear of her betrayal anymore. It extended to the chilling realization that everything we had lived through in recent months might have been an act. I caught myself thinking about the nights I spent more time on the couch, lost in thought. The mornings I preferred leaving early to avoid conversation. Was she interpreting these as signs of my own infidelity? It was a cruel, perfect paradox. In trying to protect our own hearts, we had both ended up feeding the same fear. We were making the same mistakes. We were locked in a reflective cycle of damage, a feedback loop of suspicion where every action taken to protect oneself only dug a deeper hole in the relationship. What she saw as my distance, I interpreted as her coldness. What I viewed as her lack of affection, she might have seen as my punishment. No one was innocent. We had both stopped loving and started monitoring. I still didn't have all the answers. But one thing was certain. What was happening inside that marriage was more complex, more broken, than any simple affair I could have imagined. From that moment on, it wasn't enough to follow the trail of Alina's lies. It was time to understand why she was following mine. My investigation deepened. It was no longer just about catching a liar. It was about understanding a conspiracy that had enveloped my entire life. I activated an automatic categorization feature for Alina's expenses, a tool that sorts transactions by location, type, and time. I let the algorithm do the heavy lifting, connecting dots I might have missed. That's what led me to the first major, concrete point of rupture, a series of periodic transfers, not to a secret credit card, but to a checking account with a name I had never seen before. Reyes Consulting. The detail was, Alina didn't own a registered business under her own name, nor had she ever mentioned any plans to start one. The transfers weren't extravagant amounts. but they followed a very specific pattern. Always on Wednesdays. Always between 11 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. Always exactly $500. The timing coincided with the new strategic lunch meetings she claimed to have adopted with her team. It was as if she were hiding an entire life in small, 30-minute blocks. Suspicion took on another dimension when I cross-referenced the data with her GPS records. On 6 of the last 8 Wednesdays, her phone had remained stationary within a 500-meter radius of the Sunview Motel, that same place with the discreet facade that had appeared on her bank statement. A place that accepted prepaid reservations by card, but didn't require a guest's name on file. The confirmation that something was being carefully, methodically orchestrated by Alina hit me like a silent blow. None of what she had said in recent weeks matched the data. The maps showed repeated stops, and the bank records supported the parallel routine. It was planning. Cold, calculated planning. But what truly deepened the impact of the discovery was the date of a particular purchase. 3 days after I had returned from a professional conference in Seattle, she had bought a surveillance camera kit and a GPS transponder from the same online store I used. The coincidence was disturbing, chilling. It indicated that she had not only begun to suspect me, but she had taken practical, immediate steps to confirm her suspicions. That Seattle trip, I had been exhausted. I'd barely spoken to her on the phone. To her, my exhaustion must have looked like guilt. From there, the conclusion that we were both living mirrored lives solidified. Every gesture, every absence, every habit change had been interpreted through lenses of insecurity. Instead of dialogue, we both chose tactical silence, followed by amateur, heartbreaking investigations. I felt something strange, then a flicker of something that wasn't just anger. I realized she might have decided to start an affair not just out of desire, but as a form of emotional compensation, or even revenge. The line between motivation and consequence began to blur. Was she really interested in another man? Or did she just want me to feel the way she had been feeling? My mind dove deep into this doubt. The infidelity wasn't just physical, it was emotional, symbolic. A way to communicate something that was never spoken aloud. I began to understand that our marriage was trapped in a silent cycle of undeclared retaliation. We had created a system where each reacted to the other in silence and calculation, as if on opposite sides of a courtroom without a judge. It was no longer just about finding out if Alina had a lover. The question was now broader. To what extent had we mutually destroyed each other without ever realizing it? I had to know who he was. I dug into the prepaid reservations for the motel, using a backdoor into the third-party booking system. The reservations weren't under her name. They were made under the name Julian Croft. A quick public records search confirmed it. Julian Croft, regional manager at the same company where Alina worked. Her boss. By investigating their public work schedules and cross-referencing them with Alina's fabricated travel dates, I found proof of meetings between them on the very days she claimed to be in other cities. The professional connection had transformed into a carefully hidden, intimate alliance. But now, I had enough evidence to turn that alliance into a scandal. I had spent days dealing with numbers, coordinates, and data, cross-referencing everything in silence, with the self-control of someone who chooses to suffer quietly rather than risk appearing weak. But inside me, anger was accumulating in layers. It wasn't just jealousy anymore. It wasn't just insecurity. It was humiliation, the raw, burning feeling of being treated like a fool while every detail of my routine was dissected by the person who shared my bed. Someone who once promised partnership, but chose to investigate instead of talking. And the cruelest part, Alina was doing all of this as if she were sure I deserved it. It ate away at me from the inside. I understood there was only one way to regain the dignity she had tried to take from me. I had to expose everything, and it wouldn't be a discreet exposure, done behind closed doors. It was necessary to return the shame she made me feel with the same strategic coldness she had used against me. I enlisted the help of a former college classmate who now worked in corporate security. Together, we compiled the videos from her own cameras, the screenshots, the bank statements, the geolocated transactions. Everything was time-stamped, organized like a professional dossier. I didn't want impulsive revenge. I wanted something surgical, something that cut deep but left no room for dispute. I knew Alina's weakest point was her reputation. She had risen too fast in her company's hierarchy to admit any public misstep. The stage was set. The company's annual convention, broadcast live on the corporate intranet. I appeared as a guest of one of the investors in the IT sector. I wasn't expected. No one knew I would be there. And that's exactly what gave my presence so much weight. During the final round of questions and answers, I requested the floor. I walked to the podium calmly, as if delivering a technical report. "Good evening," I said, my voice steady, amplified by the microphone. "My name is Elias Vance. For the past few months, I have been conducting what I can only describe as a personal integrity audit. And I'd like to share the results." I connected my laptop to the main screen. No one understood until the first image appeared. It was a still from one of her own cameras. A shot of the two of us in our living room. A timestamp in the corner. Then, a video. The footage showed Julian Croft leaving the Sunview Motel, followed seconds later by Alina. They got into the same car. Next, bank statements appeared on the screen. The transfers to A. Reyes Consulting. The reservations made under Julian's name. Corporate emails with fake meeting codes appeared, side by side with GPS data showing their true locations. The auditorium fell into an absolute, profound silence. You could hear a pin drop. Julian stood up, his face pale, trying to interrupt. "This is an outrageous invasion of..." But it was too late. The company's ethics director, a stern-faced woman in the front row, calmly spoke into her phone. A moment later, security appeared. The two of them, Julian and Alina, were escorted out while the room still tried to process what had been revealed. Alina tried to maintain her composure, but I could see the panic in her eyes, the terror of a carefully constructed world crumbling around her. She looked at me, and in that moment, she understood how badly she had underestimated my ability to react. She hadn't just lost my trust. She had just watched the impeccable professional image she'd spent years building collapse in front of everyone. I, on the other hand, remained impassive. There was pain inside me, yes, but it was controlled. It was no longer an open wound. It was a scar I had learned to use as a shield. What mattered most at that moment was that I had managed to reverse the roles. She, the observer, was now the one being observed, judged, exposed. This was the scene I wanted to keep in my memory. Alina, cornered, watching her lover exposed, her reputation dissolving, and the authority she used to manipulate me crumbling amidst awkward, stunned silence. My revenge wasn't shouted. It wasn't impulsive. It was calculated. And precisely because of that, it was devastating. When silence finally took over the room, and all eyes turned to the empty chairs where she and Julian had been sitting, what broke there was more than a professional reputation. It was the illusion that well-laid lies can sustain anything. I left the convention without looking back. I had done what I needed to do. What I carried from that point forward was no longer a desire for revenge, but a profound, hollow liberation. I had spent so much time trapped in assumptions, theories, and trails of distrust that seeing everything collapse in front of the truth felt like taking a deep breath after being submerged for a long, long time. In the days that followed, the company's internal media downplayed the incident with evasive notes. Leadership treated the episode as a review of ethical conduct, but those who witnessed it never forgot. Julian lost his position. Alina submitted her resignation, and the two of them disappeared from the corporate public scene. I moved in a different direction. I sold the apartment, that stage of our silent war. I quit my job, that source of my analytical obsession. I decided to start over. For the first time in years, I chose to live without calculating every step. I understood that the greatest betrayal, in the end, didn't come from hidden actions, but from the omission of words. We had both spent months spying on each other instead of listening. If we had just talked, just once, when the first doubts arose, perhaps the outcome would have been different. Over time, Sarah tried to reach out. She sent messages, wrote emails. She even showed up at my new, unlisted address one afternoon. She wasn't there to apologize. Not really. She was there to say she now understood what we had both lost. She tried to justify her decisions, saying she believed I was betraying her, that all her actions were born out of a fear that had consumed her. I listened, but I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. She left in silence, and I realized in that moment that some scars no longer hurt, but they also don't allow for reconciliation. Sometimes, the lesson comes precisely in the absence of forgiveness. Living with the weight of what one has caused another is far more educational than any quick pardon. The most surprising development, however, came months later. One of the company's lawyers contacted me. He informed me that due to the allegations and the evidence I had provided, I was entitled to a portion of the settlement paid by Julian Croft to the corporation in a judicial agreement. The amount was substantial. It could have allowed me to rebuild my life comfortably, to never have to work again if I didn't want to. But upon receiving the deposit, I made an unexpected decision. I donated it all, every last cent, to an organization that investigates digital crimes and privacy violations. An organization that helps people who have been stalked, monitored, and digitally harassed. I wanted to transform my pain into a shield for others. The woman who had destroyed my peace with cameras and trackers was now the reason I was contributing to protecting the freedom of strangers. And there, my story ends. Not with a reconciliatory kiss, or a sweet, overcoming it together finale, but with a choice. The choice of someone who, even wounded, decided to transform everything he learned into something no one could ever take away from him. And perhaps, in that final gesture, lies the only true victory. Because there is something stronger than revenge, more powerful than anger. It is the ability to move forward, without carrying what no longer deserves space within you. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.